Hi guys, in the last video we did tenant creation via Python, so as promised today we are going to be doing the VRF, or otherwise known as context, via Python. So let's begin and let's see where we go. Okay, first of all we need to get credentials from the sandbox APIC DC. This is as last time, where we just go to developer.cisco.com, we go to the sandbox, pick data center specific because that is the product we will be working with, and right at the bottom we are going to be choosing the always on ACI simulator. As you can see, here is the URL which I've already put in here, and this is the admin username and the password. Now, I've already gone and logged in here, as you can see here, but I will log out just for the sake of the exercise. Okay, so admin, that username, password, I've saved it. Now we want to be creating a VRF, but in order for a VRF to be usable, we would have to create a tenant. Now in the last video we created the tenant with this details, so what I'll do is I will run this again to create our tenant, because we need to associate our VRF with our tenant. So let's run this. It says 200 OK. We go and verify that the Python tenant here is available. And now we are going to go to networking VRFs, and this is where we're going to create our first manually. But as per previous videos, we are first going to open up our handy tool called the Show API Inspector. So the Show API Inspector, I do not want to scroll to the last thing, and I want to clear. Okay, so create VRF. Okay, the name of the VRF, I'm going to slightly change the naming convention to py for Python, VRF for the object that we are going to be creating. Let's just copy and paste that across. Alias _ description, just so that we know what objects we are working with. Now, just to give you a bit of rundown here, this is policy enforcement. So if you're running a network without contracts and it's more of a flat server structure, then you would pick unenforced here. Otherwise, you would have to pick enforced. For this specific example, enforced is always the default. So you're not going to see this entry if I leave it on enforced. So I'm going to put it on to unenforced, so that we could specifically set that, so that we know what the attribute key value pair is supposed to be. The rest you can all leave default. Data plane learning is the learning mechanism that gets used in how the APIC learns addresses. The Cisco recommendation is to leave data plane learning on, but there is some in scenarios where you would want to turn it off. Okay, so I'm going to just show this, obviously, clear that, go next. The bridge domain, the first VRF you create, there's always going to be some sort of bridge domain associated to. So I will create this on its own in future, with the calls, but for now let's just create one that would satisfy the request, because as you can see you cannot click finish without creating the first bridge domain. So this will be dy bridge domain, and it's going to be the alias, and it's going to be the description. Okay. Clear the inspector and finish. Okay, as we see let me just bring this back. So as we see, if we look for the post, we see that there's one post generated here. So what I will do is I will go and collect the whole post. This was our last tenant, but let's create a new page for this. And we want to take the payload, which is the most important part of this. Now, I like to use this tool. Easiest way to find it is best JSON viewer, but it is codebeautify.org. I will paste all of my JSON payload in here, and I will beautify that, and I will specifically be looking for the section with the VRF BD. Now on the front end you can create you have to create a bridge domain with your first VRF or context. If you're doing it programmatically via Python, you can create your VRF on its own. So let's copy that, let's take it across. So under children we've got two objects. Let's see if we can make this a little bigger. Yeah. So under children we've got two objects inside the children in the list. So this is your VRF BD, and then there underneath here is your VRF context. So we are going to remove the bridge domain from here, and we're just going to leave the VRF. So we can copy all of this, copy. Now, before I go further, I want to not see this bridge domain, so I'm going to delete the bridge domain, this, and I'm also going to delete the VRF because we're going to create this VRF. Now back to our code editor. As you see, the last time was the tenant, so now we are going to create a new file called vrf.py. Now, just to make it easy, we'll just put this in for now, but to speed up our coding, I'm going to copy the entire tenant creation, paste it right at the top, and in this case we will verify now what we need. So the payload is the main thing that's going to change in the path. So let's just quickly go and get our payload. From here all the way down, I just want to, oh, that's way too big. From here to there, I just want to move it up a little bit. Okay, so the next thing we need is our path. The URL is over here, so let's just quickly have a quick look at it. It is API node, M-O-U-D, tenant name, or the tenant that we are creating this VRF under, and .json. So let's go back here. So as you see that it's going to start the same places where the node was previously. So if you look at this specific instance, the structure is exactly the same as creating the tenant. So no need to really change this URL. Now we're going to go back here and we're going to look at, okay, well, what have I actually put in? I've got a tenant name, which is one variable. Then I've got the VRF, which is another, the name, which is a variable, the alias, and the description. The unenforced is also a variable that we explicitly set. So we are going to use that as well in our call. So let's go here and we say we do need a tenant name. We need a VRF name. We need a VRF alias. We need a VRF description. And we need a policy enforcement. And this will have a default enforced. So let's just go and copy that. Okay, username, everything looks correct. Except for that, I do not need actually a tenant description. Okay, now we need to go and obviously inject all our variables into our text JSON object. So Python tenant will be similar to this one. So let's just speed this up. Python tenant is being used there, Python tenant is being used there, and then this will be the same here. Python tenant, Python tenant. Now we've got the VRF name, and VRF name. So let's go grab that. Let's quickly the method VRF. VRF and VRF. So the VRF name is is equal to VRF name. Let's just verify that that is correct to the variable name. Copy. Yes. Okay, now I need to do a dot format on the others. VRF name equal to VRF name. Last one, actually, let's just go copy paste. A lot of times copy and paste can get you into trouble, but it can also speed you up if you're concentrating. Okay, then we need the alias, description, and enforcement. So let's do VRF alias. VRF alias is that format. VRF alias to VRF alias. Copy VRF description. Format VRF description. For VRF description, as you see, you've got tab 9 running in order to help me autocomplete some of these things. So the only thing here that I would do is I would add modify, so that if the VRF is already there, it's not going to give you an error saying it's already created, because you might want to make a change to the policy. But for this case, we're just going to try and create it, and if it's there, it won't throw you an error. Okay, so policy enforcement, let's just quickly go and get that. Copy. Format. Policy enforcement equals policy enforcement. Okay, we are this looks all fine. The only thing I need to do now is I need to make sure that this is not going to be called temp, this is going to be called VRF, because that's what we are creating from the check. Okay, so there is tenant name. So we got VRF name. VRF alias, VRF description, and new variable is going to be all enforcement, which is in our case unenforced. Copy. Python tenant, yes, that's fine. Now we are going to create our py vrf. Okay, now we are returning the status code. It is a different function, so it's called VRF now. And the main thing is our entries are going to be different now. So just to make sure I get all of the correct ones, I'm going to go there, copy and paste them in like this. Let's just type this in front. Okay, so we've got URL, which is going to be here. Then we've got username, password, tenant name, which is this one. We've got VRF name, we've got VRF alias, we've got description, and policy enforcement. The entire thing is going to be this. Okay. Now this section I need to remove completely, because this was just to get it nicely into the page. Okay, let's see, that all looks fine, and let's run it and see if we get any errors. Okay, 200 went through fine. Let's go look at the APIC and we'll see. Okay, now we have got the VRF back, PyVRF alias, exactly the way we put it in. Just to give you guys another example, let's create PyVRF 1.1.1 under the same, so a secondary VRF under the same tenant. We save this. It is currently only one VRF there. We run this again. Another 200. And there is PyVRF 1. So that confirms what we are trying to do is working. So let's delete this one. Let's go back to our code just for cleanup, because we will be using these objects later on as we go along. Okay, that seems to be it. Okay. If you like this video, please subscribe and hit the bell. And the next video we will be doing a bridge domain from scratch, and we'll move on with all the objects associated into getting a network working.